Howdy, and welcome back to Celebrating Vintage Model Kits. Going to be looking at something that's a little bit of an obscure subject matter and an obscure kit maker. And this is the Curtis Condor, made by ITC, or Ideal Toy Corporation. It is a 1954 issued kit, and it's in 1/81st scale, and it's kit number 3724. So ITC, as the name implies, Ideal Toy Corporation was mainly a toy manufacturer. They're famous for teddy bears and all kinds of other things. And then they decided to get into model kits in the early 50s. Initially, it was basically just kind of toys that you had to assemble. But then they started making some relatively decent, model kits of a lot of obscure aircraft. And then they also made stuff that had a lot of functionality, like submarines, aircraft carriers that launched. The subs shot missiles. There was a missile base, with I think a Thor missile that would launch. And so I go a little bit more into the history of ITC in a previous review of an ITC kit. And Max over at Max's Models has also got a really good history on this one. So I'll provide a couple of links in the description for both of those for you. So the Condor this is the Condor 2. This is the T32, and it was a derivative, follow-up to the B-2 Condor, a bomber, which also did have a civilian transport version as well. And it is or had its first flight in 30th of January of 1933. It was a two-bay biplane with retractable landing gear. Used two Wright Cyclones, approximately 700 horsepower, give or take a little bit, depending on the particular model. It would cruise around 190 miles an hour, and the main type was a 12-passenger luxury night sleeper transport. And initially there was 21 built to fill that need by both Eastern Air Transport, who became Eastern Airlines, and then American Airways, who became American Airlines. They flew regular service for both of them for approximately about 3 years. There was also two out of that 21 that were built initially that were purchased by the U.S. Army Air Corps and used as executive transports. Under the Army Air Corps, they were designated as YC-30s. The Colombian Air Force purchased a few. They got three BT-32s, the bomber variant with floats, and they were utilized in the Colombia-Peru War in 1933. Other versions, the AT-32A, there was three built with variable pitch props and 710 horsepower engines. The AT-32B, additional three were built of those. Those had 720 horsepower Cyclones. The AT-32C, there was one built, and that was a special for the Swiss Air, for Swiss Air in Switzerland. That one ultimately crashed, unfortunately. The AT-32D, there was one built. Didn't really see what the difference was on that particular model. And then the AT-32E was for the U.S. Navy. Two were built. One went to the Navy, one went to the Marine Corps. They were given the Navy designation of R4C1, and ultimately both of those were used for the U.S. Antarctic Service. The BT-32 was a bomber version, dedicated bomber version, and 8 were built of those. And then the CT-32 was a cargo version with large cargo door in the rear, and 3 of those were built. And as far as who used them, the civilian version, Chile with, let's see, who was it? The LAN Chile airline. They purchased 3 former American Airways ones. China, the Central National Aircraft Corporation, Got 6 AT-23E freighters. Colombia, the Avianca. Got 2 El Salvador TACA International, got an unspecified number. And then there's the Switzerland one that we mentioned before. That one ended up crashing in Germany on 27 July of 34. In the United Kingdom, International Air Freight purchased 4 T-32s. These ultimately were absorbed by or appropriated by the Royal Air Force at the beginning of World War II. Military operators, you had Argentina, as the aforementioned, 3 CT-32s. China also bought separately some bomber variants of the BT-32. Colombia got 3 BT-32s on floats. Honduras had an unknown number. Peru an unknown number. And then the Royal Air Force, as the previous mention, the press for service ones. And then, of course, a couple for the Army Air Corps, and then a couple for the Navy Marines. So that's a little history on the Curtiss Condor. Now let's take a look at our kit here. We've got kind of an interesting box art. We've got a map, sort of Antarctica, and the South Pole being the center of the O. We've got the 12-inch wingspan, scales out to 1 inch equals 7 feet, which is that 181 scale. Ideal Tour Corporation here. And then we've got a nice rendition of Admiral Byrd, or at the time Commander Byrd's aircraft that was used for the Antarctic expedition. And then we've got on the side here some more kits that were available. Convertible, Lincoln, Continental, USS Constitution, the Robert E. Lee. On this side here, SS United States, a Yacht Atlantic, Stinson Trimotor, the Dornier DOX, and then the U.S. Navy blimp. On the end, we've got our kit number and a place for a price. And again, information about ITC and the scale. And same thing on this side. This is a typical earlier 50s box with a hard box with a lithograph that's been wrapped around and glued down. And then here we have our instructions, which are a little bit different compared to what we see from a lot of the mainstream kits. And just simple printed, not the best printing, but just right on some paper here, just black and white. General instructions of assembly. Assembling your fuselage, and it looks like you get some crew and somebody in the cabin that you just sort of stick somewhere. We've got some clear pieces for the windows, which is nice. An assembly of your lower wing and tail. Then your top wing with struts. Looks like your engine nacelles. Your props going on. And looks like some of the 2 propellers, doesn't look like there's any way to make these spin. I guess you're just supposed to glue them straight onto the engine there. And then the final assembly is putting on the floats and showing you for decal placement. And then their unique stand. The stand was a similar one to what we saw in a previous review of the Duck. And then your final assembly, again, talking about putting on your decals and painting instructions here. And see our other beautiful and authentic models at your local dealer. And so once you get to here, you say, you have now finished your model. So there you go with the instructions. Here's the decals. 2-color decal. And got on the back here, Type 200. These got a 1957 date for when these were produced. And it's an interesting mix of markings here. So this number here is a number for the first aircraft from Admiral Byrd. And these match up with that. But then we've got this Eastern Air Service logo on here, which is a little odd. But this NR 12384 was selected from the factory floor originally. It was supposed to go for American Airlines or American Airways, so it was actually painted in American Airways color. So that's why when you see this aircraft, it's got the same color scheme as an American one. So it's got the blue and kind of orange color. And then it was selected by Commander Richard Byrd for the second expedition. It was transported by ship down to Antarctica, to the Little America area. It was utilized from 33 to 35. It was built with fixed landing gear that could be swapped out for the floats or for skis. And it carried the nickname of William Horlick. I wasn't able to find why it was called that, but for some reason it was nicknamed that. I don't know if that's somebody who passed away on a previous expedition, but that was the name that it was given. And then after those couple of years that it was used, it was scrapped upon returning back to the United States. Now, in the when doing my online research, it appears that this may have been issued with a separate set of decals to make an Eastern Air Service version. It doesn't say anything about it in the instructions nor on the box, but yet we've got this Eastern Air on here. So it's possible that there may have been a second decal sheet, or as you can see, this is 1957 from a earlier kit. So maybe an earlier version of this had two sets. I'm not sure on that. There's not a lot on this because this is a fairly rare kit. So if you've got some information about that, absolutely let us know about it. The other thing that's different too is that this was molded in this blue color, and the majority of the ones that I found online are molded in orange. Now I have a second kit that was partially built that also was in orange, but it did have the Admiral Byrd markings on it. So, I'm not sure the full history on this. So if anybody knows a little bit more about it, please share about it in the comment section. But there are, of course, some photographs of the Admiral Byrd's aircraft. So I'll show those to you right here. Okay, so let's look at our plastic. Looks a lot like your typical early 50s kits, real thick, heavy plastic. And so we've got our fuselage pieces here. No detail at all on the inside. Very large ejector pin marks on there. And we do have some representation of fabric covering on the rear, on the vertical fin and rudder. We've got some raised panel lining on the side. Looks like it might just be kind of showing you where the cheat line is. There's your door there. And there is some kind of ribbing across the top, so it does kind of represent the fabric covering on the fuselage. A little bit of sinkhole, or kind of little dips here, which probably match up to the ejector pins. Yep. And representation of the landing lights up in the nose. And I think this is supposed to be the windows up on the top that they're just representing with lines. But not too bad. Fit's not too shabby. Looks like you got a bit of a gap here in the tail area. And the bottom looks like you'd have to kind of smooth this out a bit, but the top is got a pretty good fit. So there's our fuselage. And here's our upper wing pieces. We've got pretty decent representation of fabric covering on here. Not too heavy. We do have lines for the ailerons. So not too bad. Here's our lower wing, which also includes the engine nacelles. Same thing here. Pretty decent representation of the fabric. And let's see, this tree's got our horizontal surfaces with, again, some fabric representation. We got some struts. Here's our propeller, which that's pretty weak in detail. There's another sprue, old style, early 50s, real thick, giant sprue. Some more struts. There's our crew and passenger. Not much to those guys. And here's our floats. So, not much detail on these. In fact, I don't see any surface detailing except maybe the nose cap here. So we got those. And a couple more empty sprues. Here's our prop. And that prop is not really well done. And here is our interior cabin windows in a slightly bluish tinge. And here's the cockpit. No external framing, just bends around at angles. Pretty thick. There's nothing to see on the inside anyway. Here's our engines. And very simple here as well. And then this is the stand, which is pretty cool. So it's designed to kind of look like a wave, and then this part here then goes on like that. And this goes up inside the aircraft. You got your arrows matching you up right there. So kind of a neat look, kind of looking like a wave, like it's just taken off. This is also molded in kind of a bluish color as well. Pretty neat. So that's it. That's all there is to it. And this really was about the only Condor available forever. Eventually somebody did make one in vacuum form. And rumor had it that these molds had gotten lost. So this kit at one time was fetching very high prices because this was it. If you wanted a Condor, this was the kit. But the molds showed up eventually and ended up with Glencoe, who has repopped this. So as far as any other releases, there was also a release under the Cleaware label, which I believe was Canada, if I'm not mistaken. And that's it. So your 54 issue from ITC and Cleaware, and then finally Glencoe. So that's it on this guy. If you've built one of these, absolutely tell us about it. I'd like to hear what you have to say on it. From what I read, it looks like the fit is challenging with this kit. Just kind of playing around with it, you can kind of see that it might be a bit of a difficult kit to get together. But especially if you got one still sitting on your shelf, take some pictures of it, send it in, so you can share it with our viewers in the next viewer build video. Well, that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and have yourself a great rest of your day.